So this idea is that we are born with this pre-wired set of programs, basically, that are core emotions that evolved over hundreds of millions of years in mammals, so that we could survive. And basically, I'm calling it emotions for the public. I changed a couple of things for the public, but we're talking about affect as physical experience that either draw you to something that's good for you or away from something that's bad for you, something that's either scary or dangerous or an attack, right? And drawing you something to things that feel good and are nurturing and safe and or make you feel excited that you want to go towards something. So we're born with these programs, and then to become socialized, so these programs come up, and if you look at babies, we've got the baby in the room, you know, right, as a new mother, when the baby, there's no inhibition yet. So when they are angry, you see it, and when they are excited, you see it, and when they're joyous, it's an interesting thing to study a baby because you're seeing pretty much core emotional experience. But then we have to fit in with our parents and our peer groups and our churches and synagogues and mosques and just every single group. And if you think of core emotions as they are for me, they are the selfish, although I don't like that word, but they're all about what's good for me. The inhibitory emotions are ways that the body and the mind can dampen those down in service of getting along and being loved and approved of. And so we need all these things in appropriate amounts, right? In trace amounts, so that one, shame civilize us, it makes sure that we follow the rules of the group. But if we are told repeatedly how we should be and shamed for aspects of ourselves that we need to be, like our sexuality or the color of our skin or our intelligence or things that we can't help that are just part of our essence. And it's, most parents mean well, but when your kid is too different, it's scary because you don't know how to take them on that path of difference. So we try to, myself included, I wish I had had my book before I had children. I could have spared them a lot of shame, I think, in terms of, I have a child that didn't go to college. Well, my whole family, everybody went to Yale and Wesleyan and are doctors, and, so you're not going to college? That's terrible. What does that mean? And then that's an example of, creating shame and anxiety really for no reason, or, even find out the reason. But so shame is a way that we kind of help people conform, and in small amounts it's good, but most of the patients that come into our offices have too much shame because we live in a society that never talks about shame, doesn't educate us about shame, on a continuum. And if there's one bit of advice to new therapists that I say, it's besides learning the change triangle, it's to learn about shame. There's so many great books, like Gershon Kaufman's book, The Psychology of Shame, like Donald Nathanson's book, Shame and Pride, and then not to mention Brene Brown, who I think both those came in after those guys, but is wonderful to share with your patients also, because I bring up shame in every session from the get-go, because once you can talk about it, and then when you see it, you can begin to refer to it always as a part. So this is just a little clinical stuff. I never say, what are you ashamed about? I say the part of you that feels ashamed, because just by parting it out diminishes shame. It's not all of you. It's this little part, and we want to talk about it and heal it and comfort it, that type of thing. So that's shame as an inhibitor of emotions, guilt also as an inhibitor of emotions, and very often needs, being able to say, I need this, or setting limits and boundaries. People feel so guilty to do that. It's very hard to do. So to be able to talk about it in these ways is very helpful clinically. And we want to value, all of these are good when they're good and bad when they're not in service of the patient's welfare, or maladaptive when there's too much. And then anxiety, again, is a big constrictor, and I think of it as a signal you know, whenever there's anxiety, we want to look for these. And I mean, anxiety is a part of life. The goal is not to not have anxiety. That's impossible. But when people have anxiety and you don't want to sit in it, the change triangle on a daily basis as a self-help tool is great.